Tell your friends and neighbors about the Spearsy Spin.
Hi folks, and welcome to Mondays, the Spearsy Spin. Got a lot of things to go over today, some of the things you're going to hear in the show. First of all, last week we talked about Rochester, New York, that voted to become a sanctuary city. Not to be outdone, Monroe County, New York, is now debating whether or not they're going to become a sanctuary city. Now, the reason I talk about this is not just because it's in New York State, but rather because these particular idealisms are now being played out all across the United States. And we talked about why it's bad for Rochester. We're going to talk today why it's bad for Monroe County, New York, to consider that as well. Now, don't get me wrong, the folks that are proposing this, it's for a very good cause. It's to help people. It's to help the refugees and so on. And I'm all for that if it could be afforded. But when you can't afford it, and we're going to be going over some demographics, and the demographics clearly show there's a problem. And it's not just, in Rochester, New York, or Monroe County, New York. Again, this continues to play out all over the United States. So we're going to be looking at that. We're also going to talk briefly about Paleo Foods, that is Kraft, actually, in Campbell, New York, decided to close their doors. We'll talk a little bit about that. The Sears Holding Corporation, under the guise and leadership of the young and forever talented Eddie Lampert, has made a decision. We'll be telling you what that decision is, and I don't think it's going to affect too many people, but we'll tell you what it was. We're also going to talk about the 2017 Oscars, and we're going to relate Jimmy Kimmel's attacks on President Trump. That's all coming up here today on the Spearsy Spin. And first up, we're going to talk a little bit about legislator Mark Muyo, and I hope I'm saying that right. He's a Democrat out of Rochester. And he's having a bit of a standoff between himself and Executive Cheryl Denolfo, who's the executive of the county up there. And basically, Mr. I hope I'm saying this right, Muyo wanted to get a vote to have Monroe County become a sanctuary county, and Cheryl Denolfo is against that. And again, I understand the need and the want and the desire to help immigrants, to help the immigrants that are here. And I also understand that we're seeing things in the news where we have ICE officers going into homes, taking mom out, taking grandma out. And some of these folks have been here for years and years. They've become, part of the fabric of the community, and they've worked and so on. So I'm in agreement. We need to take a second look at that. We're more interested, I think, as a nation, to get rid of immigrants that have come here illegally, that commit crimes, all sorts of crimes, who have had an amount of time here and are not gainfully employed or have tried to be gainfully employed, or who may be here dealing in drugs, guns, whatever the case may be, certainly violent offenders. So that's where we really need to focus. But the problem is, and we're talking about Monroe County, not because it's in New York State, but because this is playing out all across the nation. And I'm pretty sure that if I was to pull up the demographics for other areas of the nation that are also looking to make sanctuary cities, sanctuary counties, we're probably going to see pretty much the same thing here. So we're going to talk about Monroe County, New York, and I'm going to give you some in-depth demographics. That is my thing, by the way. So we're going to talk about demographics, and then we're going to try to understand why this won't work.
You know the threat is real. You sit in meetings with advisors and operatives who tell you there could be Islamic sleeper cells in every major American community. You know the southern border is a welcome mat for terrorists to enter our towns and neighborhoods at will. You know about their plots to kill us in our shopping malls, our sports stadiums, and our office buildings. You won your office by talking like a champion of freedom. Now it's time to act like one. Pass a national right to carry law that guarantees my constitutional right to defend myself, my family, and my fellow Americans anywhere inside our borders. And make sure the enemies of freedom know the power of freedom. No law-abiding American should be forced to face evil with empty hands. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
Hi folks. Times we live in today are scary. Religious freedoms under fire, racial divide never more evident, political powers fighting, foreign countries looking to exploit our country, news media reporting unfair on issues, folks searching out the truth. I listen to the news, then I listen to the Spearsy Spin. Mike Spears has experience, education, determination, and grit to get what's going on in our country. Listen to Mike Monday through Friday. I'll listen. Hope you'll be listening too.
Said that Castro was making a speech to a large assembly, and he was going on at great length, and then a voice out in the crowd said, "Peanuts, popcorn, Cracker Jack." And he went on speaking, and again the voice said, "Peanuts, popcorn, Cracker Jack." And about the fourth time this happened, he stopped in his regular speech, and he said, the next time he says that, he says, "I'm going to find out who he is and kick him all the way to Miami." And everybody in the crowd said, "Peanuts, popcorn, Cracker Jack."
Okay, we're back, and we're talking about sanctuary, well, in this case, a sanctuary county, but we've been talking about sanctuary cities, and we're picking on Rochester, New York, and Monroe County, New York, only because they're currently, up in front of the news. Whenever we talk about wanting to bring folks in or keep folks that are there in, it is a good thing, and as a country, we need to do that. The problem is we are not financially able to do so. I pulled up a bunch of demographics for Monroe County, and you can look at these as well. You can go to Monroe County, New York.org, I believe it is, actrochester.org, any of these, and also Monroe County and Trends.org, I believe it is. So we're going to take a look here at Monroe County now from 2010 to 2014. 23% is a figure that is down, and apparently what that's relating to is fiscal income overall. So that's one thing we have to look at, and that's actually down even according to this from 2005 to 2009. Child abuse and neglect is up 10.6, and that is recorded up until 2014. So it's a question mark there. Typically, we see child abuse more so, not in epidemics, but we see it more so when the economy becomes flat. We see it more so when there's extreme stress within the family. Number one stress, of course, typically is finances. Foster care is up 2% as of 2014 in the county. Teen pregnancies are up 3.2% as of 2014. Now, there's been an annual change in jobs in Monroe County of 8%, but that's 10% worse than New York State overall. And how they do that is typically it's so many folks within 10,000 or so many people within 100,000, and then they look at those figures ambiently, the state versus the county. There's a change in the number of business establishments, 9%. Now, there's a little improvement for Monroe County, but it's still 10% worse than when you compare it to the entire state of New York. Now, the county government spending per resident as of 2014 was $2,227. That's for the year 2014. Now, that's up 10% more than the Empire State of New York. And again, those are percentages, they're not dollars. So that figures out to $3,224 per human within the county. So when we look at school spending, if we look at per student in 2014, $19,885. That's up 10%. That's worse than New York State overall. And again, that's not comparing dollar for dollar, it's percentages. We have 22% in the county that is enrolled in Medicaid, and that's as of 2013. Now, another thing to look at is that people with diseases, now, for instance, they're listing these diseases currently in Monroe County: chlamydia, gonorrhea, folks with AIDS, folks living with HIV are statistically higher in Monroe County per percentage of every 100,000 people. Now, for example, 552 people out of every 10,000 have chlamydia in Monroe County. And when you compare these four diseases and the percent as apropos to 10,000 or 100,000 people, the entire state of New York is actually lower than Monroe County. And so that means the Monroe County is actually worse than the state with regard to percentages of people suffering from those particular ailments. Now, this, of course, would exclude New York City. Now, these figures come from the 2013-2014, apparently some type of census. And 17% of the folks in Monroe County receive an earned income credit. And again, this earned income credit percentage-wise is worse than the entire state of New York. Now, that's the percentages, not the dollars. 15% of the population in the county are living in poverty. That's as of 2014. And again, that's about the state average, so that can't beat them up too much about that. We look at median rentals within the county, and they average out $820 per rental for folks that are renting their homes, apartments, and what have you. And that's about par with the rest of the state of New York. In 2014, 2,674 families were placed in homeless shelters. Now, that's the families, but that becomes a total of 5,811 individuals for every 10,000 people in the county. That means that 11 out of every 10,000 are homeless. Okay, so those are some quick demographics. And why we look at that is because we're looking now to keep immigrants there, and we're looking to bring more in. There's no money. I mean, yes, it's a wonderful thing, and if it was not for the money issue, we would do that. And again, we go back to what President Trump is talking about. And we have to make sure that we're getting this clear. I mean, I know that for the most part, the Republicans and Trump supporters understand that, but sadly, on the other side, these folks either don't want to get it or can't understand. It's just this simple. A, we have to be very careful who we let in here. Last week we talked about MERS, which is the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. Okay, you can't have these folks coming in being unchecked. You're going to put everybody at risk. The other thing is we need to vet people with regard to their ties to Islamic terrorism, any type of terrorism, anything that would be a disadvantage to the safety of the folks here in the United States. So again, this is where we're at with this. But just the demographics alone play out and they tell the story. Now, that does not mean that the folks who want to bring folks in, or they want to keep the current illegal immigrants, that doesn't mean that they're bad people, they're wrong, and they want to help folks. And sure, I understand. But sadly, again, we have to be able to afford it, and we have to be able to make sure that any new folks are vetted medically and criminally. Is a teeny tiny town called Campbell, New York, and it's between Bath and Corning, New York. And there is a company called Palio Dairy, i.e. Kraft Foods, which has announced to its approximately 320 employees that they're closing the doors. Now, there's two issues that resolve around this. So first and foremost, Kraft is announcing that they cannot afford to continue to do business in New York State, which is most likely true. New York State is not business friendly, and I can tell you I've owned several businesses. I've been involved not only on a small scale, but in several corporate settings. So I can tell you that New York State is in fact not a business-friendly state. But here is the problem. The problem is the governor of New York State, Andrew Cuomo, who I truly believe has tried to bring businesses into the state. Sadly, a couple of years ago, Mr. Cuomo spent, not just Mr. Cuomo, I shouldn't say it that way, but spent $50 million in advertising in an effort to bring folks to New York State. Sadly, I don't know what the figures are. They were so low. I'm thinking that these figures were 2 or 3 businesses. It was not a lot because people won't come here. They don't want to be here. They don't like the personal taxes. They don't like the corporate tax. And they certainly don't enjoy the real estate taxes. So what happens here? Well, this is more than just a milk plant closing or a cheese plant closing. First and foremost, you're going to lose the real estate taxes that these folks pay, which means the folks living in Campbell, New York, are at some point going to have to pick up that slack, or within Steuben County, I guess I should say. The other issue is that not only are 320 people approximately losing their jobs, but there's a ripple effect, because how many farmers in the last, pick a number, 30 years have been sending their milk to Palio Dairy, i.e. Kraft Foods? So what becomes of them? I mean, do they just automatically go to another milk plant? Are they automatically picked up? And if so, what's the criteria? In other words, if they're going to have to pay an amount of money to have their milk picked up and shipped, that's going to dip into profits for the farmer. And I can tell you, because I was raised on a dairy farm, that prices with milk fluctuate. It's priced per 100 pounds. 100 pounds. And, I have friends actually in that area that are farmers, and they tell me that if milk goes below $14.75 a hundred, they start losing money. So just to break even on the farm, milk has to maintain $14.75 a hundred. So there's that issue. But the other issue is that you have trucks in and out of there constantly, not only making deliveries to Palio, but picking up products, the ricotta cheese and so on. So that means now Kraft is going to have to come up with an idea and a way to now get their products to their consumer line that was, serviced basically by the Campbell plant. It's bad. I would hope that within the next month, maybe perhaps the state government officials could step in and say, you know what, here's a truck full of money, keep this thing going. I don't see that happening. I wished it would, but that's where that's at.
In a recent closed-door speech to donors, politicians, and media, Bill Clinton spoke about American gun owners. Quote, "A lot of these people, all they've got is their hunting and their fishing, or they've been listening to this stuff for so long that they believe it all," unquote. And we all remember Barack Obama's 2008 comments to a room of San Francisco elites. Quote, "It's not surprising then they get bitter. They cling to guns or religion," unquote. The arrogance of their superiority requires this reminder. They don't rule us. They don't give us rights. We grant them power. They don't make us safe. We pay to protect them. They don't make us free. We're free already. And as long as we have the Second Amendment, we always will be. We are America, and our politicians are only as powerful as we, the people, allow them to be.
Attention Kmart shoppers, back in our sporting goods department for the next 10 minutes, we're having a blue light special. All hunting camo is going to be 50% off under the flashing blue beacon of bargains. Yes, as that blue light keeps spinning round and round, the prices keep going down and down. Now that's got to take you back a bit, I'll bet. I don't think you'll be hearing too much of that anymore. There was a time when folks went to Kmart to take advantage of all those blue light specials, and Kmart was able to move a lot of merchandise, and customers were able to save some money. That all changed when a gentleman by the name of Mr. Conaway, Chuck Conaway, took over the controls at Kmart Corporation right around the year 2000. And, of course, the blue light had already been put away and forgotten about even before Chuck got involved. But Chuck had an idea. We'd have a new and improved blue light at a Kmart store. And what better way to do it than to take a blue 12-foot circular swimming pool, turn it upside down, and have it nailed or bolted to the ceiling, and then get some very, very, very powerful JB speakers, put them in there, and then also have a type of laser light that would spin a big blue K on the floor. And then you could go ahead and talk, but that'd be hard to hear because, you see, Chuck also decided that, you probably ought to have some music playing. So those JB speakers would be blaring out different music and hit songs, so that while you're trying to talk to the folks, this light beaming from the ceiling along with some pretty loud music, sometimes I guess that got in the way. In the old days, it was just an old blue light, and it was on a kind of a stick or a stem. It was on top of a cart they rolled around, and when they wanted to have a special sale, it had a battery inside. They pulled a switch and the blue light started blinking, and then someone would get on the PA and start talking. Well, Kmart, of course, was Kmart back then. Of course, now it's Sears Holding Corporation, well, at least this week. But the big guru of the Sears Kmart empire, which is Eddie Lampert, has decided that he wanted to make news. So he put this out for a press release, actually, that Kmart and Sears will no longer carry Trump items. I pause there because that pause illustrates what the rest of the nation and everybody else thought about that. I mean, I don't know why that could possibly be considered news, but it was picked up by some of the networks and just given a short blurb. It is sad. It is sad to see where just Kmart, we'll just talk about Kmart. I mean, Sears, you could cry as to what's happened to Sears, but strictly looking at Kmart, Kmart was actually positioned when Bernard Faber left in, I believe it was 1991. He retired. Kmart Corporation was actually set and ready with funds set aside to go forth and become what Walmart Corporation is today. The problem? Well, you had overzealous CEOs, starting with Floyd Hall, whose motto was spend today and forget about tomorrow. And if we start to run out of money, we'll just make the hourly associates, I guess, they could probably cover 2 jobs in a store, I'll betcha. Wait, maybe even 3 jobs. Well, maybe that's why sometimes you go into a Kmart store today and you see different people. For instance, it could be an office person unloading a truck. And if you shop there more than once a week, this poor person is probably running a layaway, and, well, by the time you get done shopping, well, she'll probably be ringing you out. That's what it's come to today. And when we talk to financial gurus like the folks at Prudential Securities, they do not paint a rosy picture for Sears Kmart. Now, that's not to really attack Eddie Lampert. Eddie Lampert used to kick around Saks for a while, and his big thing is stocks. That's his thing. Retail is not his thing, and he's had some folks in positions to run Kmart. But again, you cannot take somebody like Mr. Adamson, who was the CEO of Burger King, and say, hey, you know what, old buddy? How would you like to run the Kmart empire? Well, sure. You know, he's walking into Kmart's to do a walk around, and he says, well, I don't understand. Where's the flame broil? So nothing against, some of these CEOs that came in after the $8 billion Chapter 11 in 2002. But it is sad, and it's just a day-to-day thing. I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel bad for the associates that are still there working. So that's the Sears Kmart thing. Now we want to turn our attention to the 2017 Oscars. Yes, the 2017 Oscars, where, well, anything goes. Well, pretty much. Now this year, they had the young and overly talented Jimmy Kimmel. And, of course, Jimmy Kimmel, he was the star of the show, so to speak. And Jimmy used this opportunity, of course, not only to work with the awards and to talk about the awards, but what better way to get your political message across than, well, when you're giving out those Oscars. And Jimmy Kimmel said that many of his acquaintances had asked him to speak up and say something to unite the country, because you know as well as I do, why, you gotta have a talk show host to bring closure to an aching country. Yes, and I don't know who these acquaintances are, but perhaps they did say that. But Jimmy Kimmel said that he's not the man to unite the country, but if every person that's watching, I probably need to wash it, watching the Oscars took a minute to reach out to someone that you disagree with and have a positive conversation, now not as a liberal, not as a conservative, but as Americans, we could heal. So that's the first thing that I did, as I went out and talked to my neighbor today, and who also fixes my car, and found out I got to come up with a huge chunk of money in a short period of time. So, but it's funny that Kimmel would take jabs at President Trump. I mean, it's one thing for political satire, and every president's had to endure that. I know that Rich Little super impressionist. He would pick on Nixon, and he picked on Reagan, and he picked on Carter. But these are just out-and-out attacks. For instance, Jimmy Kimmel, during the Oscars, said, "It's so easy to reach out and heal. I want to say thank you to President Trump." I mean, well, remember last year when it seemed like the Oscars were racist? Well, that's gone, thanks to him. And then later, Jimmy Kimmel went a little bit further. He asked the crowd to stand up. Yes, put down your margaritas. Stand up for Meryl Streep, who memorably slammed Donald Trump at the Golden Globes. So Kimmel, I think he kind of made an ass out of himself, because the stuff just isn't funny. It really is. One of the last things that he said is that some of you get to come on stage tonight, make a speech that the President of the United States will tell in all caps during his 5 a.m. bowel movement. So the attacks continue, and what I can tell you is this, and that is that it's not working. As a matter of fact, all these different attacks and these different strategies that try to malign the president is actually blowing up in a lot of people's faces, because it's reinforcing the original Trump supporters, and at the same time, it's taking the independents, and a lot of them are switching over to Trump, and your standard everyday ho-hum Democrats, who are not, far left or liberal, they're starting to see this, and it's like, well, wait a minute, do I want to be part of this? Do I want to be part of a party that it's just constant grading, forever degrading? And do I want to be associated with a bunch of folks who go out and riot? They go out and smash up stuff. They go out and, burn up stuff. Do I want to be part of that? No, I don't think so. Now, CNN, MSNBC, they don't get it. And they're very upset because President Trump has already put them on notice that, you know what, we're not going to play these silly games. I'm the President of the United States. That's the way it is. If you can report the news, then that's fine. But if you're going to slice it, dice it, and make it something that I didn't say, well, we're going to have problems. So the narrative that has been out there, and that's one of the first things that I jumped on, was that the far left-reaching news media has tried to spread this theory that Donald Trump is, he's a madman. Why, he's not fit to be president. Why? And then we have the actors, the actresses, the Hollywood elites who try to banter that same thing. Well, look, you folks make a living pretending to be somebody different, pretending to be someone you're not, and some of them are very good. Now, I know a lot of people, a lot of Republicans are down on Alec Baldwin. I never had anything against Alec Baldwin. I thought he was a really great actor. I still do. And I think he does a great impression of President Trump. But this seething hatred. Bad news. Well, folks, that's our show for Monday. We'll hope you'll be with us Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for more of the Spearsy Spin. In closing, I want to say a couple things. First of all, remember, there's only one world, and we all have to live in it. So let's see if we can do that. But also in closing, I want to remember Bill Paxton passed away Saturday. Bill Paxton, ton of movies. Titanic is one of the big ones, of course. Terminator is another one. I could go on and on, but just super actor, in my opinion. Just always liked him. And it's sad that when folks pass away unexpectedly like this, he was having an operation, I guess, and something just didn't go right. I don't know. And also we lost Judge Joe Wapner from the People's Court. So it's my daughter, when she was little, would say, turn on the Whopper, or something to that effect. I called him the Whopper. So, hey, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for being with us. Take care, and we'll leave you with the thoughts of Bill Paxton and Judge Joseph Wapner.